It's been 2 weeks since the HBCU Band Culture Battle of the Bands has taken place, and honestly, I wasn't going to say anything about it, but it's time for me to go ahead and speak my thoughts. So I'm going to talk about that today, and I'm also going to get to some of the comments from old, episodes past. All this and more coming up next on Luke's Band Report. Good evening, afternoon, good morning, or whenever you're watching me right now. My name is Jay Luke, the owner and operator of the Passionist Network. I'm also the host of Talk That Talk, and I'm also a panelist on Blow the Whistle. You can check out all of our merchandise at www.realtalkthattalk.com. You can also find us at Real Talk That Talk on Instagram, as well as the Passionist Network on Instagram. All right, let's go ahead and get into it. First and foremost, I'd like to start out by sending my condolences. Everybody here at the Passionist Network, as well as myself, wants to send my condolences out to the students at Miles College and the band program. I've been seeing the information just going across my timeline. So shouts out to you. No, not shout out to you guys, but our condolences, prayers to you all, and for those students and the tragedy that has happened there. We, as a band culture, as a music culture, all of that, stand behind you all, and we support you all. We are all going to continue to support each other regardless of how many differences we may have. And in that regard, we're praying for you all. We're praying for the families. We're also praying for the band program as well. So I want to make sure that I start out by saying that and acknowledging that, because that to me is top priority. All right, with that being said, let's go ahead and move on. So the HBCU Culture Battle of the Bands, it ended up happening. And I'm going to be quite honest, the last time I remember reporting on it, I remember actually saying that it was canceled. So apparently it ended up going on again. I'm gonna be honest, I had absolutely no clue. I didn't really see a lot of information posted about it, and so I just thought that it was still canceled. The thing that really kind of threw me for a loop is that in Atlanta, because I'm a member of KK Psi, there was the bowling stroll that typically happens during Honda. I couldn't figure out why there was a bowling stroll happening in Atlanta, and I was like, there is no Honda. And all of a sudden, uh, here comes the HBCU Culture Battle of the Bands. So they had it. I guess I just missed the bus on that one, but it happens. Anyway, but I wanted to go ahead and have the conversation about it, and I was reluctant to do so. And I'm going to tell you why as I get into this conversation. So before we start, the first thing I want to say is shout out to every single band program that did participate and all of the band directors that actually participated in it. So let's go ahead and start with the good. The first thing is that from what I could tell, it had a pretty good turnout. I mean, seeing as it originally, I guess, was canceled and then it was on. What I will say is I think that by and large, people just actually want to be able to see bands. I think that's still a thing, right? I think that people do get excited to see bands, period. Specifically HBCU bands. So I don't think that there is I don't think there's a negative in HBCU quote unquote band culture. I don't think that at all. I think that people still are excited to be able to see bands, period. And so it did look like it was actually a pretty decent turnout. Now, I could be wrong. If you were in the building and you saw something different, please let me know, because from what I could tell, it seemed pretty decent. Seemed like it was more people than the ESPN Battle of the Bands. But I digress. But what I am going to say, that's the first thing. So kudos to the people who actually showed up. Kudos to the band directors and the band programs that performed. I will also say that I'm going to say that it's really interesting to continue to pull these things out after you're coming back from a break. I think it's really admirable that you all do that. I'm going to put my thoughts later on as to what I feel about all of those things down the line. But again, I'm really glad that you guys were able to pull that off, pull some shows off, pull some uh not field shows, but floor shows off, and also get the music together for those students. So that's kind of where I am on the good. Yeah. Let's go into everything else. Could it have waited? Honestly, yeah. Here's the reason why. I'm going to go down this list. I watched every single floor show. Shout out to Showtime Web for being able to give us the footage and the feedback on every single floor show. I watched every single floor show. And while I do appreciate and like the fact that they were able to pull this off, do we think that this was the top quality that we could have all had? From a university perspective, University of Higher Learning, so on and so forth, band programs, do we think that this is the top-notch performance that we could go out there and present? I'm going to tell you, just from listening, there's intonation all over the place. And let me go ahead and preface this by saying, again, I am not here to bash. I'm not here to talk down. I'm only going to tell you the perspective from what I hear from. And that's what it is. There's intonation all over the place from every group. Not one that I can actually say that from an intonation standpoint, balance and blend took the cake. And that's from the floor show. That's from the battles that were going head to head with one another. Intonation was just not good. And so because of that, that automatically took me out of it, because it begs the question of, were the students prepared to be able to do this? Now, also understand that it was cold. So, but we're inside a facility. So inside that facility, what did the tuning sequence look like? How did that happen? Were you able to get a quality warm up? Were you able to go through your tuning sequence correctly? Be able to play through some trouble spots to make sure that their intonation areas weren't as bad? Some of the questions that I had. Also, for most band programs, everyone did a slow tune. I think that's where the intonation was exposed the most. Yes, we want to create big sounds and so on and so forth when we're having our drill tunes or our drill music. But when we start actually playing the slower tunes and we start really talking about balance and blend, intonation, tax and releases, so on and so forth, and we really want to start getting into these songs that have complex chords and so on and so forth, are those chords balanced? And what is the intonation and the tuning tendencies and the pitch tendencies on those chords? And are they coming across in the way that you want it? Now, I will also say this. I think it was Benedict, their band director, was, when they played End of the Road, I liked what he did, right? So you get the crowd involved in that, right? Because you already know coming in, you may be seen as the underdog. And because you may be seen as the underdog, you turn around and you get the crowd going. Yeah, the band's going to sing. We going to turn around. We going to get the crowd involved. And I thought that was a really good thing, to try to get the crowd going. And basically, if you were being judged, that would be some great GE. So I thought that was really good. The other thing is, now let me take it off band for a second. Let me step into my other hat. As a lighting engineer, one of the things that was really bothering me is the person who was doing the lights. I don't know what program you were using. I don't know if you were using Enlighten. I don't know if you were using Disco or Illuminate or what console you were using or whatever. But here's the thing. It's okay to have movers on the floor when people are doing their thing. But if you're going to use a darker red, you probably want to take one of those movers and use them as a spot, and maybe spot the actual group, and then let the color be around the group. Because sometimes it became too dark, specifically if you're using the reds. If they were using the blues didn't cover up the programs as much. But even still, I would say you probably want to use those movers as a spot. They probably will never see the show. But if they do, just let them know. That could help. Other than that, if you were using those flashes, use the flashes on big moments, not just at the end of every single song. Moving on to band stuff again. See, that lets you guys know I'm well versed in a lot of stuff. But moving on to band stuff again. Yeah. So again, Fort Valley. I thought Fort Valley had a big sound when they started out, but when they start moving, their sound changed. When they start breaking down into different parts, the sound starts to really, really change. But here we go. Here's a smaller group understanding where the arena that they're walking into They do Order My Steps. And they do it with a singer. Smart move. Do you know why? Because as chocolate folk, you can't be upset with a gospel song. You know, if you play gospel, it has been historically proven. If you watch old episodes of Apollo, whenever somebody does a gospel song, you can't boo them. You just can't boo them. And again, I think Fort Valley did a great job by playing that game by saying, "All right, we're gonna throw a gospel song in there, and we gonna make sure y'all like it." And they had a really good singer that actually was able to carry the tune. So I thought that was really good. Very smart move by you guys. But again, my biggest problem with this whole thing, by and large, was just intonation was just bad all over the room. Now, am I saying the bands were trash? No. Let's say that again. Luke is not saying the bands were trash. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that intonation was not good across the board. But I do think that everybody took some good steps in order for them to be able to get what they wanted. Alabama State, here we go again. And I know that they're part of the group, but Alabama State, they pulled them out right at the end. There goes the Honeybees. And you guys know how I feel about the Honeybees. I think they're really good dancers. I'm not taking that away from them at all. I don't like when I start talking about the Honeybees, and a lot of people want to think that I'm saying that they're terrible dancers. I've never said that, and I will never say that because I think that they're really good dancers, but I do still think that they are a gimmick. If you listen to the crowd doesn't go wild until the Honeybees come out. And here's the reason why. It's no different than when Southern uses the big dudes because people think that big people can't do stuff. I don't know why. Big people are human too. We can do stuff. I'm a little meaty, but we can do stuff. But again, they're the gimmick. Again, they dance very well. But that's when the crowd went crazy for Atlanta. Not Atlanta, Alabama. My bad. What I also did like is Alabama A&M having that they did their dancers tune, but then they had the slow piece that they did with I think it was "That's the Way of the World," and they had the two dancers coming out in the front as well as the flags who were doing their thing on the side. Now, I'm gonna be honest, I'm not an auxiliary person, so I'm not gonna sit here and say the flags did well, so on and so forth, or whatever. But I just like the idea of it. Again, back to the lighting thing though. I didn't really like because I think it was somewhere in there where they made the lights red or something like that, or and I have to go back and look at it again, but it was something that just really stood out to me, and it took away from what I was seeing because I was trying to see them, and it was too dark. And so again, you want to use your movers as spots. That'll alleviate situations like that. But I did appreciate what Alabama A&M did as far as trying to do something different with the flags and the two ladies in the front doing the dances. That was great. Also, I will say phrasing is really an issue. Um, One of the things that I've always tried to make sure that I understood when it came to interpreting music from an actual recording into just making it an arrangement is that you want to make sure that the music is indicative of what the actual tune is, right? So if and I'm not saying that this is what Alabama A&M did, but I am going to use this as an example. If in the song, that's the way, if they say that's the way of the world, but then you play da 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 da, but that's not right, right? So you want to try to interpret your arrangement based on what you hear in the song. So sometimes we clip the end of phrases sometimes, and we want to try to say that that is for us taking a breath. That's fair, but you end up cutting off the phrase, and then it becomes what we deem as, I'm not saying you all are, but what people deem as middle schoolish, right? Because you can't complete 4-bar phrasing. You don't want to breathe on the bar line. You want to breathe. So I think that's what ends up happening sometimes as I'm listening to a lot of groups. And that's what I actually heard, not just in, well, actually, I heard that in almost everybody. And so I think we have to think about, are we going to compensate this big sound for phrasing? So are we overplaying, but then not considering phrasing in the matter. So just some things that, I think that we should look at. But all in all, I think that intonation for me was just a big problem from top to bottom. And it became very difficult for me to be able to sit through it and listen to it the whole time. So that is why I've had the biggest issue with trying to be able to come to the terms of actually having the conversation about it. Because I already know that there are multiple people who are just going to be like, that's the greatest thing that we've ever heard. And this is going into the next topic. Where can we go from here? Listen, I've said this multiple times, and I'm going to say it again. Just because it's us doing it doesn't mean that our poop don't stink. All right? Just because it's us doing it, that does not mean that it sounded great. Representation is representation, true, but representation, if it isn't good, is not a good representation. That's just what it is, and we have to be honest with ourselves. Here's the other part that I have a issue with. We've been doing this since Honda. We go on a break, we cut our break short to come and do a performance for little money. Why? Why do we infringe on student breaks in order to perform? Excuse me. In order to perform for pennies. Here's the caveat. But we didn't want to be adjudicated for more money during a season that we were already in. Again, I don't understand this cutting the break short to kind of try to come back, to try to prepare in a week to do a performance where to me, it doesn't add up. And then we say we're doing it for the culture. We're doing it for blah, blah, blah. We're doing it for the, well, all right. At what point do we say, all right, we'll do it for the culture, but we also need to be able to be truly compensated? That's my question. Because to me, and I'm going to be real, and I've had this conversation before, and somebody did agree with me. To me, it just feels like the pimp game. It really does. We're going to keep pimping these HBCU band programs out to say it's for the culture, to expose the culture, to continuously have the culture out there, but we're not going to give them nothing. But we're going to make them feel good about the fact that we promoted them. They out there. We're going to bring all of the camera people in. Shout out to Showtime Wear. Shout out to Justin. Shout out to A1. And you go home with pennies. But you got exposure. It's for the culture. Our people done seen it. But at what point are we actually going to value ourselves? At what point do we say, hey, we're not leaving the university for X amount of dollars? And if you can't meet that, then I'm sorry. And I'm not saying that the HBCU culture Battle of the Bands did, but I'm not, so please understand that. But I have a question. If an arena that's holding HBCU band programs as a Battle of the Bands sells out, and the company that's holding said Battle of the Bands profits big, and every band gets $20,000, who won? It's a viable question. Who really won? Now, all right, let's say said company paid for your travel. That was nice. Gave you a meal or meals. That was cool. Paid for your lodging. That's nice. But you still get the $20,000. Who won? I mean, I just really feel that we need to value ourselves a little bit more. I think that we have as it comes to, I ain't gonna say the dope game, but as it comes to marketing, we have a great product that we can market really well. We can advertise it really well, but I don't think that we sell our product to the highest bidder. I think we just allow our product to continue to get pimped out for the culture. And so I just think that, honestly, where do we go from here? Now, there's a other school of thought. When I was reluctant on having this conversation, I had to call my brother, Quan, and we had a good conversation. And one of the things that he did bring up to me was the fact that generally HBCU bands now, more specifically, don't necessarily have an avenue to be able to play as much as they used to. So these are the things that allows them to continue to play. Very fair argument. I'm not going to argue against that argument. Not at all. But I'm still going to say to myself, the kids are still students. The directors are still directors, right? Like, these are still people, and they deserve to be compensated for their work and their time. That's what I'm saying. If you're going to cut a student's break short, then what compensation does that student get on the back end? Yes, the experience is great. I think that's awesome. I think the experience for that, I mean, my experience at Honda was great, right? But my experience as a student and my experience as a director are two totally different experiences. As a student, I didn't know what the inner workings was and what was going on behind closed doors and so on and so forth. As a director, I understood what was going on, and we were all like, this ain't right. We doing all this, you putting us in here, we do this banquet, so on and so forth, and then we go home with a measly couple of bucks that will probably feed the kids maybe once. It just didn't add up. And so, again, I'm all for the kids wanting to play, needing to play, so on and so forth. But I also understand that the HBCU band culture is a little different than the PWI culture. I understand all of those things. I absolutely do. But I think that we need to rethink and reroute how we do some of this stuff. I just really think that we just pimping ourselves out. I really think that we are pimping ourselves out. So you guys let me know in the comment section. You all let me know what you feel about how I feel about where we go from here. Also, let me know about whether you feel or what you felt about the HBCU Culture Battle of the Bands. Did you think it was good? Did you think it was bad? What things do you think that could have been better at the same time? Also, let me know about what you felt about the bowling stroll. KK Psi, Tau Beta Sigma. As a brother, I always will support the bowling stroll. I remember going to the first actual bowling stroll before it was a contest, but it was actually at a bowling alley. Like, I remember every single one of those things. So that was definitely a great experience back in those days. And I feel super old. But anyway, let me go ahead and get to some of your comments from episodes past. All right, here we go. So we're getting to our first comment. Our first comment is actually from Brother Moore. Brother Moore is a dear friend to the Passioneers Network, as well as my brother, my KK side brother, and my brother everywhere. So I think he's in every single organization I'm in. But anyway, here we go. He says, this is to the what is an HBCU drill and or sound. He says, I was expecting you to share your perspectives of what is the HBCU sound as a music educator. I didn't know what to expect, but I was curious. I didn't know if you were going to tie in our African culture, jazz culture, church music culture, or what. But I totally get what you did say and how you tied it to your overall subject. Appreciate you, Brother Moore. I'm going to be very honest. And this is a question. And you guys tell me in the comment section, because I'll tell you how I feel about it. Truthfully, when we start talking about how HBCU band culture sound came to be, we really always do bring up the idea of the fact of the jazz and the church music and so on and so forth, how that was incorporated into what we do now, that big band sound, as it relates to marching band. I think the issue that I have is those types of genres were also being played on the field, right? people were playing Coltrane on the field. People were playing Duke on the field, right? Those were genres that was actually being expressed on the field, and because of that, that helped to bring in that stylistic sound of playing. My question is, how is that now being serviced today? Because we're really just playing, I ain't gonna say rap tunes all the time, but we're playing a lot of rap tunes now. And now we're just playing them loud. So I don't know how that necessarily ties into the jazz culture specifically. Um, so and when you ask that question, that really, and it's one of the things that I wrestle with as a director, of trying to understand and really get a grasp on those things, is to really trying to see how they tie in now versus how they tied in the past. In the past, I really think that that is a viable argument, but now I don't really know if that argument is still as strong or as valid. So very good thoughts there, Brother Moore. I definitely respect your question and your thoughts on that. Let's go to the next one. This one is from, I want to say, Preston Vol 4439. HBCU bands have the burden of getting fans into the stands during football season, which generates revenue. This likely is why JSU leads in football attendance by leaps and bounds over many HBCUs. The Boom's presence in the stands makes money for the athletics programs. This was also to the episode, What is HBCU Drill and Sound? I'm going to be very honest. I'm not going to necessarily just put it directly on Jackson State. Um, I wouldn't be surprised if you're a Jackson State fan, but yes, I do agree that the fact that HBCU bands do actually hold that burden, basically because of the fact that, by and large, I mean, I'm not going to say that people don't go to HBCU games to watch the football, but by and large, people go to watch the bands, and that necessarily isn't relegated to JSU. I think that's relegated to most HBCU bands: Jackson State, Southern, PV, Alabama State, Miles College. You know, the list can go on and on. But that, and I will say that that definitely is a burden that we have to bear. And I think it's a good burden that we have to bear. But I also think that in doing so, I think that we also need to grow and not stay stagnant in what we're doing. I think that innovation is always a beautiful thing, and when we fail to be innovative and we become stagnant, then that is where we have the biggest issue. Last one, I'm going to look at this one. Rocky B4637, also from the episode what is HBCU Drill and Sound. Golden Delight is North Carolina A&T secret weapon. When those flags go up covering the field, it just takes it up another notch, especially in performance setting. Nobody else is seeing them. Sorry. And the way North Carolina A&T and Norfolk Drill allows you to actually still hear the sound. They're playing to the audience. I'm a Southern fan, but the halftime shows have become boring. Most times when they start drilling, you can't really hear the sound anymore, which then makes the show lose entertainment value. And it's not just Southern; it's a lot of other schools with that same problem. Thank you, Rocky B4637. One thing I will say, and I will say this again: HBCU bands are not a monolith. You know, downfield drills, two-step drills, patterns of motion, so on and so forth. It's something that has been going on for a really long time. And I think that HBCU bands, have taken it and adopted to what they wanted to adopt it to and use it how they want to be used. If you are going to do that, if you're going to do a downfield drill, if you're going to flank to the end zones or whatever, my biggest thing is keeping the sound consistent. Um, I want to say that it does happen sometimes where you start out real big in the front. You blow to, or you play to your audience, and then you face downfield, and then the sound goes directly to the end zone. I think it's again, to me, there are some bands who do have a bigger sound, and they can continue to have that sound. I think it works well in the dome. I don't think it works well outside. But again, I don't think HBCU bands are a monolith, and so if that is how that program chooses to drill, that's on them. Yes, North Carolina A&T, Norfolk, we continue to face front, and I know the Legion. I can't speak for A&T, but I know the Legion patterns their drill off the arrangement, and so whatever melodic line is speaking at that time is going to be the instruments that are facing forward. Anything that's going to be background is going to be the instruments that are going to be facing backfield or to the end zone, so on and so forth, to allow them to just be background. With that being said, though, again, I earnestly believe that whatever you do in drill, just do it to the best of your ability and continue to be innovative in anything and everything that you do. That's my thoughts on that. But absolutely, man, this has been a great episode, man. These are my thoughts. I continue to try to be as open and honest as possible, man. But you guys tell me your thoughts in the comment section, man. Also, please make sure you stay tuned this week for Talk That Talk. We're going to be here again on Wednesday. Also, go back and look at episodes past. If you haven't looked at the last episode, I'm telling you, it was a great episode. And you got to learn a lot more about who I am, who Quan is, and who Portia is. And Apri couldn't make it on that episode, but still, go back and look at that episode and check out where we came from. Look at some of our best performances and hear some of the conversations that we have in that time. Also, another Luke Band Report will be coming soon as long as we continue to have this thing called band. So I will be here for you guys on next week. Again, this one was a hard one, but we got it through. So without that, man, I appreciate you guys for sticking with me, and I will see you all on next